And now, please welcome the great senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren.
You're sitting here. I love you too. I love you too.
Senator Warren.
You know, the best part is she'll give you a hug like she gave us. We're not special up here.
Yeah, we're not really, that's true.
This whole campaign has been around hugs. You know that?
Yes.
I'm at over 35,000 selfies around the country now, so we're in there.
It's impressive. Senator Warren, you've been coming to Netroots since before it was cool. This is actually our largest Netroots Nation ever. I think
Keeps growing.
Just keeps growing. Isn't this your 7th Netroots?
So the first time I came was 9 years ago, and it was a moment to say 2 things. One was thank you, and the second is please more. And the thank you was we had just together, Netroots and My Fight and some other groups that gotten the CFPB signed into law. And the second was we were in that space. The consumer agency didn't have anyone to set it up yet. And so I knew that it wasn't enough just to get the thing passed into law. It's a good bill. It was going to be a good agency, but only if we all stayed in the fight, got it into the fight, got it built the right way. And so it was the folks at Netroots who thought somebody should be setting that agency up, got out there and fought for it. And that's how I ended up setting the agency up for President Obama for a year. So this has really been the work we've done together. And by the way, the giant financial institutions have had to return $12 billion directly to families they cheated. That's your work, and that is the proof that we can make government work for the people. We just have to get in that fight.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Why do you believe this community, you keep coming back, why do you believe this community is so important to building progressive power in America?
So I think the way we're going to build progressive power in America literally is from the roots up. It's whether you call it grassroots, netroots, it's about how we reach out, because the central problem in America today is we have a government that works great. It works fabulously for a thinner and thinner slice at the top. The rich and the powerful have figured out you can invest in buildings, you can invest in training your workforce, but you know, you get a much better return on your investment when you invest in politicians in Washington to give you what you want. Well, Netroots, grassroots, a grassroots movement is how we take our country back and how we decide we are not going to be an America that just works for those at the top. We're going to be an America that works for everyone. That's it.
So, the FTC just voted to levy a $5 billion fine on Facebook. Exactly. The vote was along party lines, with the 2 Democrats saying that the fine didn't go enough. And in fact, the fine was so low that Facebook stock went up after the announcement. They were thrilled. So given the impact social media played in the 2016 elections and just general invasion of our privacies, how should tech companies be regulated here and around the world?
Okay. So let me just start with a blunt statement about that entire industry. We need to break up big tech. And for me, it's about 3 issues that kind of twist together. The first one is the structure that we talk about. And there's a variation on this structure every time you go through it, it's with Facebook, it's with Amazon, right? It's with Google. Amazon's the easiest one to talk about it for. Think about it. You go to Amazon to buy pet cookies, right? You go to buy all kinds of stuff at Amazon. And if you're a small business and you want to sell, you've got to be on Amazon. Just to give you an idea of magnitude, Walmart is 9% of all retail sales that happen physically. Amazon is 49% of all sales that happen online. So small business goes and they provide the platform. Yay, I love the platform. But they also suck up information about every one of those transactions. What you searched for and what you searched for, they suck up enough information to figure out, oh, this pet cookie store is profitable. And so what do? They use that information to decide it will become the Amazon pet cookie store. They don't call it that, but that's what they do. And then they move your profitable business that you sweated and bled for back to page 7, where it dies. So here's my view on this with these giant companies. They can run the platform, in other words, they can be the umpire in the baseball game, or they can have a team in the league. That is, they can be the businesses, but you don't get to be both. You're breaking. I'd also add on this, we need to enforce antitrust laws. One of the consequences, of being giant is that you suck up your competitors and buy out your competitors, roll over your competitors, and over time, creating these bigger and bigger giants are both enormously damaging to the marketplace, to consumers, and ultimately to democracy. When giant companies have so much power that they get to call the shots in Washington, it's no longer just about the economy that they own, it's our entire country. We've got to fight back on this. Thank you.
It's time for a local community question from Hannah.
Hi. You forgot the baby.
Oh, no baby. My babies are home. Sorry. Hi, Sarah Bela and Abby Rose. So this question's a little bit wonky, but I think you're gonna get it.
Are you making fun of me?
Absolutely not, Senator Warren. So my name is Hannah Sassaman, and I'm a community organizer. Hi. I'm the policy director at Media Mobilizing Project right here in Philadelphia. And I'm a community organizer who's worked at the intersection of race, economic justice, and technology my entire adult life. So right here in Philly, our city is working to replace money bail with a computer program, a risk assessment algorithm that tries to predict who is safe to release pre-trial and who has to stay in jail to supposedly protect the community. But as Michelle Alexander wrote, this is the newest Jim Crow. That is cooking bias from a racist system of policing and prosecution into a chain of ones and zeros. How would you, Senator, end mass incarceration without turning to algorithms like that one, or to electronic monitors, facial recognition software, or surveillance to make sure that we don't replace prisons and detention with e-carceration for Black, brown, immigrant, queer, and poor communities?
So I'm a huge fan of Michelle Alexander's work. And one of the things she points out in her book is kind of the front to back quality of our mass incarceration system. That it starts on the front end with what we make unlawful, it then works its way through the judicial system, including the cash bail system that basically penalizes people for being poor, penalizes them for being Black, penalizes them for being brown, penalizes them for being queer, goes after them for anything that stands out. It's also a system that then locks people up for profit, and at the end, even after people have served, destroys their opportunities to be able to reintegrate into their communities, to be able to get housing, to be able to get a job, any part of this. So when we talk about how we're going to change and reform the criminal justice system, it really needs to be front to back. And it needs to be a conversation that is about race, that is about gender, that is about sexual identity, that is about all the pieces. We have data, for example, that show us that for blacks and whites who commit exactly the same crime, not slight differences, exactly the same crime, blacks are more likely to be arrested, more likely to be arraigned, more likely to be taken to trial, more likely to be convicted at trial, and more likely to receive higher sentences. It's study after study after study that tells us we have a criminal justice system that does not meet what is engraved above the Supreme Court of the United States, equal justice under law. It is a system that tilts in favor of a few and against the many, who are lost and who are destroyed by that system. So, when we think about pieces on how to change, part of it is we're going to have to look at this and break it apart, because we've got a lot. So, for example, I strongly support making marijuana legal. And a reason for that is not just for those of you who think it's fun, not just for the mellow folks in the back, or the folks with all the cookies over there, but also just to understand how race intersects that very question. That the best data show that African Americans and whites use marijuana at about the same rates, but African Americans are about 3 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana use. So, easy answer for me, make it legal and then that problem goes away. But there are a lot of places where we have to come into the system, and I particularly, since you started, want to talk about the question about cash bail. We need to get rid of the cash bail system. We need significant reform in this area. But we can't replace it with another system that treats blacks and whites differently, that treats the LGBTQ community differently from straight, that treats transgender differently and singles them out. Because here's the problem. You put in a bunch of data that have already been influenced by race and by gender, by age. You put those into the system, and surprise, surprise, turn the crank twice, and that's exactly what comes out of the system on the other side. So I'm in on reformation. We got to reform this whole system. I'm big on understanding the data as we go through it. And the third part, and this is where I'm so glad to hear that you're doing community organizing on this, is as we design a better criminal justice system, it can't just be a handful of folks who go behind closed doors and make this happen. It's got to be that we hear directly and from the communities that are affected, and not just hear, but integrate with the communities that are affected so that people are able to bring their own stories, their own voices into this. So I've started part of this. So for example, I have said we need to get rid of all for-profit prisons. Nobody should be making a profit off locking people up. But there's a whole lot more coming in this plan, and I hope we're going to be able to work together on it. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Melissa Ryan from our community asks,
I'm there.
Thank you, thank you. Do you want to say a few words about immigration?
We're gonna talk about
Let's
that.
talk
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about immigration.
Let's let
She
her
is going
answer.
to talk about that issue.
Thank you. Let's let the senator answer your question.
She can't speak if you keep yelling. Please.
So I'd like to talk about undocumented immigrants. I'd like to talk about mixed status families. I would like to talk about an overhaul of our immigration system, because that's what we need. And it starts with the premise that immigration is good for this country. It makes us stronger. It makes our economy stronger. And it ties us to families all around the world. So I have released an immigration plan. I hope you'll take a look at it. And here's what that immigration plan starts with. The first part it starts with is we need to expand legal immigration in this country. We've had families held apart for far too long, and that's not who we are. It doesn't strengthen our economy. It doesn't make us safer. It doesn't help us build a stronger future. Part two, we need a path, and I will build a path to citizenship, not just for dreamers, but for families. A path to citizenship for people who are here to stay. A path for citizenship that is both fair and attainable. It's about workers. It's about people who've been here for a long time, who have become integrated into our society. Part three is I will stop this ugly mess at our borders. No great nation tears families apart. No great nation locks up children. We must at the borders respect the dignity of every human being who comes here. We need independent immigration courts so that there is truly justice for people who are here. I want to say, just off to the side on this, I come from a tradition of witnessing. I went down to the border in McAllen right after the word came out that the Trump administration was taking children away from their parents. I saw firsthand the cages of women, the cages of men, and then the cages of little girls. Just think about it, a 12-year-old locked up. She has no idea where her family is. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know where anyone is going, and no one to talk to. And they're just clumped together in cages like the size of this middle section, with a little guard tower in the center, so someone can keep an eye on these children. I talked with nursing mothers, one who told me about how she had given a drink of water to a police officer, and as a result, someone had told the gangs that she was working with the police. She knew what that meant, that her life and her baby's life were in jeopardy. She wrapped up her baby and headed to the United States. This is our moment to live our values. And that means down at the border, when people come here who are desperate, people come here whose lives have been turned upside down, people who come here to try to build a better future, then we need to treat them with humanity, and we need to follow the law. I made an announcement yesterday, and that is to anyone out there who's working in this system, understand, you abuse immigrants, you physically abuse immigrants, you sexually abuse immigrants, you fail to get the medical care that they need, you break the law of the United States of America. And Donald Trump may be willing to look the other way, but President Elizabeth Warren will not. On my first day, I will empower a commission in the Department of Justice to investigate crimes committed by the United States against immigrants. Know this now.
Thank you, Senator. We have a question from a local community activist named Kendra.
Hello, my name is Kendra Brooks. I'm a mother of 4, grandmother of 3, a Philadelphia public education organizer and activist, and a city council at large candidate under the Working Families Party here in Philadelphia. Here in Philadelphia, we have been ground zero for the decimation of public education, for corporates trying to privatize our children's education, for over-policing of Black and brown students, and for massive school closures. But we are also the home of a true movement for public education. Our movement is full of people ready to create a world-class quality education for our city on the local level. So I ask the question, what is your plan, your comprehensive plan for K-12 education in this country, particularly around school funding, charter school accountability, and union rights?
All right, thank you. I just want to start this one, Kendra, by saying I've known what I wanted to do since 2nd grade, and I've never varied from that. Okay, you're laughing. You didn't decide till 3rd grade. I get it. I wanted to be a public school teacher. So can we hear it for America's public school teachers? I used to line my dollies up and teach them. I was tough but fair. My family didn't have much, and by the time I graduated from high school, we didn't have the money for me to apply to college, much less to be able to go. My big chance, it's a twisty, turny story, but my big chance was an opportunity after I was married, had dropped out of school, to get an education at the University of Houston, which back then was a commuter college that cost $50 a semester. I held on for dear life and I became a special needs teacher. I have lived my dream job. I see what education does and the opportunity, and I see it from both ends. I see it because of what it opened for me, the public schools I went to as a kid, the opportunity to get a college diploma, and ultimately I went to a public law school. I believe that public education is part of what creates opportunity in America, and my investment for that runs deep. So, how do we do it? Let me just give you a couple of ideas. First, we start with a wealth tax on the top 1/10 of 1% in America. 2 cents. And we then spend that 2 cents to provide universal child care, universal preschool for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old in this country, to raise the wages of our child care workers and our teachers, to make sure that our schools have the funding they need, that they have the buildings they need, that teachers have the training opportunities they need, to provide tuition-free technical school, community college, and 4-year college for every one of our kids, and to cancel student loan debt for 95% of the people who've got it. That puts money in, and that will make a big difference in our schools, but it won't do it all by itself. The second part, in America, we need to make it easier to join a union and to give unions more power when they negotiate. And nowhere is that more true than with our teachers. Because when teachers get out on the front line, sure, they talk about teachers' salaries, they talk about their working conditions, but our teachers are out there fighting for our children. So we need to support the power that they need by making it easy for them to be unionized. So thank you.
Okay. No, hold on.
Thank you.
We're going to do one more question.
Okay,
One more question. We have 2 minutes.
good.
All right, this comes from Daily Coast community member DHL, not to be confused with the international conglomerate.
I was just going to say.
Logistical conglomerate. The ideological balance of the Supreme Court was unfairly tilted to the right when President Barack Obama was robbed of his opportunity to appoint a replacement for Scalia. How do you intend to restore ideological balance to the Supreme Court?
So I thought unfairly was putting it rather diplomatically here. The Supreme Court seat was stolen by the Republicans in a naked power move. So I'm going to do this one two ways. One is just to talk straight on about the Supreme Court. I'm very uneasy about proposals that would further politicize the court, but there are a lot of different proposals out there that people are talking about that try to depoliticize. For example, using Court of Appeals judges on a rotating basis so that you have an expanded pool. There are a lot of different ways to look at this. But we have to be clear. We cannot have a Supreme Court that undoes everything that we fight for and believe in as a democracy. That's part one. But I want to do a part two. And that is, for far too long, we have been relying on the Supreme Court when it hasn't helped. Understand this, for 47 years now in Roe versus Wade, we keep hoping the court is going to protect us. The court is our only protection. Well, you know, here's the deal. About 3 out of 4 people in America believe that Roe versus Wade should be the law. And when that's the case, then it's time for legislative action. We can take decisions in the Supreme Court that are not decisions that strengthen our democracy, that are not in line with what most people believe, and we can take them to Congress. Now, that's true on political gerrymandering. It's true, yeah. It's true on protecting our unions. It's true, here's the deal. I say it this way. People talk about a progressive agenda, but understand this. The progressive agenda, raise wages, give unions more stay in the fight. What was that?
Foreign policy.
That's not going to be in this.
Yeah,
that's
we'll try to wrap it up, folks.
Okay, I think they're not going to give me another 2 minutes for
Sorry,
foreign policy.
blame that, yeah.
But the point is, let me do this. A progressive agenda is supported by somewhere between 2 out of every 3 Americans and 3 out of every 4 Americans. The progressive agenda is America's agenda, and we need to get out there and fight for it. People told me we would never get a consumer agency, and the reason we wouldn't get a consumer agency was because the big banks didn't like it. Well, yeah, they didn't like it, duh. It cost them a lot of money. But the point is, they spent $1 million a day for over a year to fight that consumer agency and other financial reforms. People in this room fought back. And at the end of the day, you don't get what you don't fight for. We got in that fight, and that's how we got a strong agency. We got to do this, and we got to do it in area after area after area. Most of America, the wealth tax is not only something Democrats love, it's not only something independents love, a majority of Republicans across this country support it. Canceling student loan debt. It's not just something Democrats like, it's independents and Republicans who are struggling with student loan debt. We have a chance to realign politics in this country, and it starts by getting in the fight for the things we believe in. So let's make democracy good.
Thank you, Senator Warren, for being with us today.
Thank you.